So thanks very much for attending this evening. My name is Liam. I'm team leader for English for this year, and you're very welcome. I know it's not easy to attend all the various things that happen in the evenings, especially on a Wednesday evening on the week of the Easter holidays. So we're really grateful and glad that you're here with us this evening. And I suppose the focus of the evening in front of us here is on the new prescribed text list, which was recently published by the Department of Education and the NCCA. So first years that we have now from 2021 to 2022, as they move now into second year, and the first years that we'll have between now and 2023 will work from this list. So you can check the chat momentarily for a link to the new prescribed text list, and you can download it from the chat. So just in case you haven't accessed it or you want a copy of it, if you check the chat feature there now, in a moment, you'll be able to get it and you'll be able to download it for yourself as well. So just a couple of little things for us tonight. The webinar, as I said, is being recorded. So just to make everybody aware of that. And the second thing then is that you have a couple of different options here, but the easiest way, if you do have a question or anything that you'd like to ask us, please do pop it into the Q&A box. So depending on what device you're on tonight, you might be on an iPad or a tablet or a laptop or your mobile phone, but there should be in your control bar, which if you tap the screen or hover your mouse, you should be able to find it. And then if you can click on the Q&A, if you do have a question that pops up during the night, please do pop it in there and we'll do our best to get back to you. We have the full JCT English team here tonight, so we'll hopefully be able to answer your question as promptly as we can. We're also going to share a couple of links in the chat with you as we go through the evening, and we're going to navigate out to our main jct.ie/English website. So you'll be able to do the same. And all the material that we have collated for you this evening that accompanies the webinar is all on our website and available for you to download. So we will show you exactly where you can find all that material momentarily and as we progress through the webinar this evening as well. And as I said, I suppose from the outset, it will be uploaded, the recording that we have here, to the website as a future CPD support. So if there are any colleagues or any new members of staff that might join your departments in the future, this will be there for them on the website should they wish to return to it. Please note that Zoom condenses videos, so there may be a slight delay if watching a video that we're playing on screen, depending on the broadband speed that you have in the location or the area where you're accessing the webinar from tonight. So unfortunately, it's just something that happens with videos through the platform of Zoom, but I just wanted to make everybody aware of it from the outset, just in case. But fingers crossed, all broadband and everything will work well wherever we are. So what we're going to do is, to kickstart, we're going to take a moment to watch a really short introductory video that will give you a snapshot of the material that we will engage with tonight and how this links to our specification. So we're going to focus on 3 texts as an example this evening, and this does not represent an endorsement of these particular texts above any other texts. The 3 texts that we've chosen to engage with tonight are used for illustrative purposes only, and you can transfer the general learning of whatever text you explore with your students. So we're going to have a quick look at this video first, and then I'll take you through the next section. So from that there now, we'll move to have a look at the new text list. So please note that this new text list will span 5 years from 2021 to 2023. And you'll see on screen that it comes from Circular 14/2022, which has been popped into the chat for you. So as we know, 2/3 of the texts on the list have been retained, while 1/3 has rotated or changed. And this list applies to 3 cohorts of students. And in case you've just joined us coming in there, our current first years to first years in 2023 will work from this list when they move into second year. So overall, there are 20 new additions to this list across novel, drama, and film. And they are as follows. So we'll begin with the novel category. And these range from young adult horrors set in an alternate Ireland, to a classic Western, to spy fiction, as well as to a contemporary verse novel set in Harlem, New York. And on screen, you'll see what they are. We have The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. We have Washington Black by Essie Edougian. We have The Western Ombre by Elmore Leonard. We have Call for the Dead from John le Carré. We have Family Life from Akhil Sharma. We have The Call from Irish writer Peadar Ó Gilliam. And we have The Old Man and the Sea from Ernest Hemingway. For drama, we have 6 new additions. The first is The Wheelchair on My Face by Irish writer Sonia Kelly, and it's a short autobiographical monologue recalling childhood experiences in a witty style. The King of Spain's Daughter is by Waterford dramatist Teresa Deevy, and that's also a short drama that's set in rural Ireland in the 1930s. We then have The Burial of Thieves by the ever popular Seamus Heaney, followed by the musical drama Hamilton from Lin-Manuel Miranda, which has won numerous awards. Finally, there are 2 new additions in terms of Shakespeare. We have the comedy Twelfth Night and the tragicomedy The Merchant of Venice. The final genre looks at film, in which there are 7 new additions to the film list. These are broad ranging from classic films to documentary and animation. There's a recent production of Little Women from 2019, directed by Greta Gerwig, Alfred Hitchcock's Strangers on a Train, and David Lynch's biopic of The Elephant Man. You'll also see the BAFTA-winning Zambian film I Am Not a Witch from director Rungano Naioni, as well as the modern take from the Spider-Man series, the only animation on the list, which is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, directed by Bob Perishchetti, Peter Ramsey, and Rodney Rothman. As well as this, there's the much-loved film The Princess Bride from Rob Reiner. And finally, in terms of documentary, there's one called The Farthest by Irish director Emer Reynolds. So having looked at the new additions to the prescribed text list, we're now going to consider our own English specification and our 39 learning outcomes across the 3 years of junior cycle English. While some texts are new, our learning outcomes remain the same. We have been working with them since the introduction of the specification in 2014. And in our CPD to date, we have considered the learning in the learning outcomes and how texts can be used as a vehicle through which to explore these outcomes. This is the 3rd prescribed text list. So we might see familiar learning with new texts and think about links and commonalities across texts and genres, which enable a universal approach to working with them. We consider what we want students to know, to understand, and to be able to do, having engaged with the text. So let's now take a look at some of the aspects of these learning outcomes that we will focus on this evening. We have selected aspects of the following learning outcomes from across the 3 strands, and we'll give you a moment to read them. They'll span the next 2 slides. Once again, these are just some possible learning outcomes that could be engaged with. They're not intended necessarily to be prescriptive or exclusive. But as you'll see on screen, we have aspects of oral language 8, reading 4, and reading 9. In addition to this, we also have aspects from writing 7 and writing 12. And we have suggested links to outcomes from the level 2 learning programs, which include an aspect, or the learning outcome, I should say, from communication and literacy, which is 1.6, and a learning outcome from the PLU personal care, which is 3.44, and looks at the choices and consequences involved in decision making. This might be looked at perhaps in terms of a character in a text. So while text might change, as we've said, the learning outcomes will remain the same. And we might take a moment now just to think about student learning in our own context and how the texts that we use in our classrooms draw this learning out. So with that in mind, we might consider some of the pointers that are on screen and thinking about how students might listen to and respond to a range of stories, or how they might respond imaginatively in writing to their texts. I'll give you another moment just to have a look at some of the aspects that you'll see on screen. So tonight, we are focusing on an introduction to 3 texts, and we've selected one from each genre: novel, drama, and film. We chose these 3 in particular because they are broad-ranging and diverse. And these texts are being used for illustrative purposes, and they don't represent a recommendation on our part. Text choice, as we all know, is dependent, and it varies on a number of factors in each unique school context. On screen, you will see one selection from the novel, which is The Poet X. Published in 2018, it's a modern verse novel told from the point of view of a teenager going through the challenges of adolescence. Our second choice this evening comes from drama, and that focuses on The Merchant of Venice from William Shakespeare. Many, I suppose, who have been teaching Shakespearean drama in general might be familiar with this text and may welcome its return. Finally, the film Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse is a new animated adventure film from 2018 with a broad-ranging appeal. We look at each of these texts in turn, considering the links, the commonalities, and the universal approach to learning, which may be drawn out with these particular texts. And on our website throughout the evening, we'll show you some supports that go with each of the texts that you will see on screen, but once again, are universal and could be applied no matter what text choice you choose. With that in mind, I'm just going to bring you to the website momentarily to show you where you can access further information on all texts that are on the prescribed text list. And from that there, you'll see that in the resources section of our website, under each of the categories and genres, be it novel, film, or drama, that you will find a list pertaining to the prescribed text list. This particular one, prescribed text for students commencing junior cycle in September 21, 22, and 23. And if you click down and you click on each book cover, it will turn around and come up and give you some detail about each and possible links that might be useful for you and your students when selecting which text you might like to engage with. As I said, these are available in the novel, drama, each one you'll see on screen, and film. You'll also find a nice resource at the beginning of the film section in relation to speed trailering. And that might be something that you wish to do with your students, and that resource has been co-developed in conjunction with the Irish Film Institute in Dublin. I'm now going to pass you over to my colleague on the team, Elizabeth, who's going to take you through the first text that we have on our list, which is The Poet X.
Thank you, Liam. So before we delve further into The Poet X, you may already be familiar with the other verse novel on the prescribed text list, The Weight of Water by Sarah Crossan. A verse novel is a hybrid form in which a narrative with structural and stylistic similarities to a traditional novel is told through poetry. In this way, the narrative moves quickly through snapshots of the characters' lives, allowing readers to move easily through the story. Take a moment to have a look at this excerpt on screen from The Weight of Water. This medium can be a lovely way to engage readers and explore a new form of storytelling. We're now going to take a look in more detail at the second verse novel on the prescribed text list, The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. It's set in modern-day Harlem in New York, And this visual from Google Earth will give us a glimpse into this contemporary setting. The use of Google Maps and Google Earth might be a nice strategy to engage students in the setting of the text. I'll just give you a moment to have a read of this brief overview of the story. Before we look at an extract, we'll now have an opportunity to listen to the author, Elizabeth Acevedo. She's an award-winning poet and novelist. She was born in New York. Her parents emigrated there from the Dominican Republic. She was brought up speaking Spanish and English, and her mother was a devout Catholic. And these influences are very evident in the novel as she recounts her experiences growing up. In this video clip, Acevedo says, "We're not that different." So what the main character experiences may be familiar to teenagers in general. Let's take a look.
I want readers to find a story that feels familiar. They know these characters, they know what it's like to have your first crush, they know what it's like to turn to music for solace, they know what it's like to write down ideas and not know if they're very good. I want readers also to hear a voice they've never heard. Right? So this idea of familiarity, but also, wow, I didn't know that that was something you could write. And I think that that kind of line is what I most want readers to find, that their voice, as unique as it is so important to be heard, but that also we're not that different, that our stories may be set in different cities, maybe from different cultures, but that ultimately we have a lot that unites us.
To give you an idea of the story and the verse form, we'll take a moment to read this short excerpt from the novel and to consider aspects of learning outcomes that might engage students. We might ask students to respond to the story itself and also to the verse style and to compare how this story is told with other genres. Students could also respond imaginatively in writing to it. We'll now show you some supports available on our website, and the link will be in the chat for you as well. You'll also find a Getting Started With guide for each of the texts we will engage with this evening, as well as a read and respond support. Each Getting Started With guide contains clips such as the one we just viewed, and this type of resource can stimulate student interest in the author, which can help encourage students to read out of interest and for pleasure. So if I just take you over here to the website, you can see in the elective workshop space, which you can navigate to on the left bar here, all of our documents for today, as mentioned by Liam earlier. But just very quickly, I'd like to show you the Getting Started With guide for the Poet X. You can see it gives you a broad overview of some of the core themes, a brief plot overview, and an idea of who the main characters are. So it can be an excellent resource for maybe initially scoping or having a look at the text before you dive into it. And then we also have this read and respond support for you as well, which looks at an extract and some ways that we might explore that with learning outcomes in mind. There are some assessments there that might be useful as well, and making links as well with other types of novels on the course. So some really nice resources there that might be beneficial for you beginning these with your students. I'm just going to hand you over now to my colleague Nora, who is going to take a look at the next text with you.
Thanks, Elizabeth. So next we turn our attention to drama, and there are 5 Shakespearean dramas to choose from on the prescribed text list, and 3 of these have been retained from the previous list, and they are As You Like It, Much Ado About Nothing, and Julius Caesar. So students intending to take higher level in the final assessment are required to study one of these dramas in full. Some familiar considerations that pertain to teaching Shakespearean drama might include some of the points that you can see here on screen. Equally, these can be applied to teaching the new Shakespearean texts on the list. You might be familiar with the quote from Jeanette Winterson that we go to Shakespeare to find out about ourselves now. So the universal nature of the themes and plot are interesting, and it also links with Elizabeth Acevedo's point earlier that we're not that different. As a result, there are many commonalities across texts that you will be able to identify relevant to the interests and context of your students. So once again, we'll transport ourselves to a new setting using Google Earth, and this time we're off to Venice for The Merchant of Venice. So whatever drama you choose to do with your students, you might use a brief blurb to create a discussion around their expectations of the drama and how the plot might unfold. So on screen, take a moment to read a brief summary of The Merchant of Venice. Okay. So while live performance is the ideal way to engage in drama, of course, this is not always possible. So here we have a clip from the Royal Shakespeare Company, which will help bring this key moment in the play to life. It might be useful to share with students prior to engaging with the full text also. I'll give you a moment first to read the brief context of this excerpt. And here's a performance from the Royal Shakespeare Company.
Are you acquainted with the difference that holds this present question in the court?
I am informed throughly of the cause. Which is the merchant here and which the Jew?
Antonio and old Shylock both stand forth.
Is your name Shylock?
Shylock is my name.
Of a strange nature is the suit you follow, yet in such rule that the Venetian law cannot impugn you as you do proceed. You stand within his danger, do you not?
Aye, so he says.
Do you confess the bond?
I do.
Then must the Jew be merciful?
On what compulsion must I? Tell me that.
The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth, as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath. It is twice blessed. It blesseth him that gives and him that takes. 'Tis mightiest in the mightiest. It becomes the throned monarch better than his crown. His sceptre shows the force of temporal power, the attribute to awe and majesty, wherein doth sit the dread and fear of kings. But mercy is above this sceptred sway. It is enthroned in the hearts of kings. It is an attribute to God himself. And earthly power doth then show likest God's, when mercy seasons justice. Therefore, Jew, though justice be thy plea, consider this, that in the course of justice, none of us should see salvation. We do pray for mercy, and that same prayer doth teach us all to render the deeds of mercy. I have spoke thus much to mitigate the justice of thy plea, which if thou follow, this strict court of Venice must needs give sentence against the merchant there.
My deeds upon my head. I crave the law, the penalty and forfeit of my bond.
Is he not able to discharge the money?
Yes! Here! I tender it for him in the court, yea, twice the sum! If that will not suffice, I will be bound to pay it 10 times over on forfeit of my hands.
Okay, so as always, we are grateful to have teacher and student testimony throughout our CPD. And now we'll take a listen to English teacher Martina Butler. And Martina teaches in Our Lady Secondary School in Tipperary. It's a mixed school of approximately 600 students. Martina has experience teaching the Merchant of Venice previously, and here she shares with us some aspects of this which have worked well in her context.
Over the centuries, what's really interesting about the Merchant of Venice is that the lines between the antagonist and the protagonist have blurred. Shylock, who was originally the antagonist, is very much the protagonist and nearly a victim of the story in a modern context, and Antonio, who was originally the protagonist, almost becomes the antagonist. It really presents a lot of opportunities for discussion in the classroom. Specifically with the Merchant of Venice, I often find it's really handy to link in with the history department as a history teacher. Ideally speaking, the perfect time would be when maybe in history they're learning about the Holocaust. The play presents a lot of opportunities for conversations. I allow a lot of time for debate, unlike Romeo and Juliet, where students were almost always on the same page with their opinions. In the Merchant of Venice, there are often multiple viewpoints and multiple ideas. So there's definitely a lot more class discussion happening. In my experience, the conversations that have happened between Shylock and Antonio, again, they're a perfect opportunity to discuss the kind of portrayal of Shylock and how he can be portrayed as a villain and a victim. The romantic element is an obvious part of the play. In The Merchant of Venice, it's not the focal point of the play like it is with Romeo and Juliet. You have the love story of Romeo and Juliet, and that's the focus of the play. But in The Merchant of Venice, the romance is the subplot. You have Bassanio, Antonio and Portia, and you have Jessica and Lorenzo. However, it's really more about Shylock and Antonio. The play it provides a lot of opportunities to incorporate pieces for your collection of texts too. Jessica's letter to Lorenzo and vice versa could be composed by students. They've attempted in the past to piece these letters together from quotes from the play, and in the past some of the students really enjoyed this project. Another activity that's really handy to do for this romantic element is completing a vlog or completing a blog. Jessica's opinions are clear here, and just like Juliet's would have been in Romeo and Juliet, they provide many opportunities for digital literacy. Students could even create something using Canva or create a comic strip that describes Jessica and Lorenzo's love story similar to Romeo and Juliet. As a history teacher also, I've always linked Shylock to the Irish in the 19th century, the penal laws in Ireland. And again, they see discrimination, they see how people were treated differently. I've tried to look at it from a victim side and then challenge students to look at it and look at discrimination in Ireland at the present. I found it worked really well.
Thanks very much to Martina for that. So we'll take a moment to read this short excerpt from the drama and to consider aspects of learning outcomes that might engage students. Characters here are engaged in decision making, and this is something that might allow for interesting responses from students. We have created a read and respond support on this excerpt as well. It's available on the website. It will be in the chat for you to download also, and I'll take you to the website in a minute. You'll also find getting started with guides for each of the Shakespearean dramas on the list. Now, again, these guides are not intended to be prescriptive, but might offer some ideas around approaches to teaching a part of the text that you could adapt or build on to meet the needs of your students. So before I take you to the website, just to point out that in order to offer a comparison showcasing the universality of Shakespeare and the learning outcomes, we also have an excerpt from As You Like It available on the website for you to download now too. And I'll show you these on the website now. Okay. So if we go to the drama section on the website, you will see all of the getting started with guides, and these are guides for all Shakespearean plays for the current and the new prescribed text list. So to just give you an idea of what these look like, this is the one for the Merchant of Venice, so you can see, and each of them follow the same template. So we have an introduction to the main characters here, as the setting of each of the plays, a key quote from the play, a brief plot overview, some themes that are explored throughout the play, and you'll also be able to access links for speeches. Here, for example, there are speeches from The Guardian by Shylock and Portia, and each one of the Getting Started with guides follows the same template there. If you go into the CPD workshop section on the website and go down to elective workshops, under the webinar series and webinar 8, which is tonight's webinar, an exploration of the new prescribed text list, here you will find not the Getting Started with guides, apologies, the read and respond supports for the Merchant of Venice and for As You Like It, amongst other supports here that Elizabeth has already shown you. So just to give you an idea of what these are like, again, I will open the Merchant of Venice here, and you will see that we have chosen an extract from Act 1, Scene 2. And as you go down then to page 3, you will see aspects of learning outcomes in focus. And we've also identified aspects of learning outcomes for students who are following the Level 2 learning program, and some activities then linked to those learning outcomes identified above. And as you can see here, the last part there, the Merchant of Venice tragicomedy using the FAIR model to explore what this means, and that can be also downloaded on the website there. Likewise, in the As You Like It read and respond support here, we've chosen a similar extract from this play, and this support explores aspects of the same learning outcomes that we identified with the Merchant of Venice, and likewise similar activities to the read and respond piece from the Merchant of Venice as well. Okay, so I hope you find those useful. And at this point, I will pass you over to my colleague Owen, who will take us through one of the new films from the prescribed text list.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
Owen.
much. I'll be with you there in 1 second. So there we go, folks. We're going to take a little look. We've been in Venice this evening, and we have been in New York this evening, in Brooklyn. And now we're going to go to outer space to have a little look in the multiverse for Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Okay, so as I said, our final text this evening is the film Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, directed by Bob Perrichetti, Peter Ramsey and Rodney Rockman. And take a moment there, please, to read this brief summary of the film. And as you familiarise yourself with the text through this little blurb here, please consider if this is the type of text that might engage students in a particular class group that you teach, and maybe why you think that. So I'll give you a little moment there. Okay, and so to give a little bit more life and a little bit more colour to that overview, we're going to take a little look at the trailer for this film, courtesy and with thanks to Sony Pictures Entertainment. And as you watch again, please just consider also what benefits you can see to the use of this trailer, or any trailer in particular for any film that you might choose to use with your students.
Miles! Yeah? Gotta go!
If you want me to drive you, we gotta go now.
No, Dad, I'll walk.
Personal chauffeur going once.
It's okay.
Seriously, Dad, walking would have been fine.
Breaking news, Spider-Man saves the day again.
Spider-Man. This guy swings in once a day, zip, zap, zop, Nancy. Accountability.
Speed up, I know these kids.
Yo, Miles, man, you get arrested?
Gosh, don't cops run red lights?
Well, yeah, some do. But, not your dad.
In your universe, there's only one Spider-Man. But there is another universe. It looks and sounds like yours, but it's not. My name's Miles Morales.
Hey, kid. You're like me. How?
I knew my day would come around this time.
I know it's complicated.
Just had to get my soul and free my mind.
You want to know what happened to you? I can teach you to be Spider-Man. I love this burger. So delicious. One of the best burgers I've ever had. You have money, right? I'm not very liquid right now.
I think you're gonna be a bad teacher. How am I supposed to save the whole world?
You can't think about saving the world. You have to think about saving one person. One thing I know for sure, don't do it like me. Do it like you.
Brooklyn! Who gonna stop us now? Hey, I'm all in, I'm all in. I ain't worried about a loss or a new friend. Never worried about a fraud or a new bitch. Lost love, I ain't worried about a process.
I see this spark in you. It's amazing. Hands up! Whatever you choose to do with it, you'll be great. I love you, Miles.
Yeah, I know, Dad.
You gotta say I love you back.
Dad, are you serious?
I want to hear it.
You want to hear me say it?
I love you, Dad.
You're dropping me off out of school?
I love you, Dad.
Look at this place.
Dad, I love you.
Dad, I love you.
That's a copy.
Okay, so that is fantastic. The first time I saw that, I couldn't wait to get into a classroom and have a look and see what students thought of it. And with that in mind, we always appreciate having student testimony in our CPD. And this evening we have a group of second-year students. We're so lucky to have them from Ardgulreach in County Limerick, sharing their reactions to having watched this film in class. Just please note for yourselves that these students watched the film for review purposes only. It is not on their current prescribed text list. We simply wanted, once we saw the trailer and got into it, we wanted to hear how a group of students might respond to this film and to share that with you. So we'll do that right now.
Would you think students in general would enjoy studying it as part of the junior cycle English?
I think they would, because it's modern and the soundtracks are more modern and it's different to what you usually learn in school.
I think they would enjoy studying it because it's interesting and they would not get bored of it. And it's also relatable with the father-son relationship that they don't always get along.
I think they would because it is relatable and the soundtrack is up to date.
People like modern movies and animations, and the soundtrack was noticeable and people knew the songs.
I feel like everyone would enjoy this movie because there's different genders, races and ages of all the characters.
My favourite image was the spray paint at the subway station because it was very colourful and you could hear the catchy music playing in the background, and it was a key moment where he got bitten by the spider and he was with his uncle.
I thought the death of Uncle Aaron was very important because to Miles he was the only one who understood him.
I learned that there are lots of layers to people and that people act different around other people, like how Uncle Aaron was Miles' uncle and his best friend, but he also ended up being the bad guy.
I learned that people aren't just bad for nothing, they usually have a reason or a backstory to their problem.
I think the film is very interesting. It depicted an interesting metaphor about people, and it shows how people can be two-faced between the uncle and the father-son relationship, how it doesn't always go perfect. It's trying to show that people aren't all good and the whys behind it, I think.
Okay, so that's very interesting. And what we found particularly interesting in the student audio, and bearing in mind that they're in second year, is their familiarity with terms like key moment, their favourite image, soundtrack, relationship, the vocab like relatable, and the term metaphor and how it was so well explained, and also how they respond to stories in general. And some of the language is echoed in the learning outcomes at both level 2 and level 3. As with the previous two texts this evening, we have created a watch and respond support for this film. And it's available on our website in the exact same area that Elizabeth and Nora and Liam took you to earlier, and in the chat for you to download. And you'll also be getting a getting started with guide for this film and an animated film glossary for teachers. And I might just give you a closer look at those little bits and pieces there. So that is our getting started with guide there, and we'll give you a closer look at them there. You'll see that you've got some character intro, some settings, some brief plot overview, a little quotation, and of course themes, and maybe a link to the trailer. Here we have our watch and respond, because it's an animated film obviously, so we have aspects of the learning outcome in focus, and we have advice on creating a possible variety of assessments there, and some possible examples of assessment for before you watch, excerpts with timestamps that maybe lead to possible discussion questions, and some possible extended writing activities. And then our last little resource that goes there is an animated film glossary, and this glossary is intended as a support to aid teachers in engaging with film and animation. And you'll see we've taken some of the key vocabulary. It's not an exhaustive list by any means, but some of the key vocabulary that maybe differentiates an animated film from a real live action film, and maybe explain those just for your benefit really. We've also had this little video here, this little website here, if it works for me now please, and we'll yeah, brilliant, imageworks.com, and we can pop down there and you can have a look and see a little more detailed, very detailed, in fact that video there is excellent, a very detailed introduction to the art and some of the innovations that went into making the movie, and you can of course interact with that with your students in any way you feel. And then at the bottom here we have some commonalities between graphic novels, and of course the animated film. And right here we have two lovely resources on two of the graphic novels on our prescribed reading list, The Savage and this one, Summer. So feel free to click there and have a look. They're very, very useful as well. So they're the resources we have for you this evening. Okay, so for the final part of our webinar tonight, we're going to look at some supports available from Children's Books Ireland. We will hear from the CEO now in a moment, Elena Ryan, as she discusses some of the supports available for teachers. Children's Books Ireland's work aims to inspire and enable children and young people to become readers for life. And as teachers of English, we encourage students to read and to enjoy reading. Think about reading outcome 5, to engage in sustained private reading as a pleasurable and purposeful activity, and the broad range of texts in the prescribed list might have appeal to a variety of student interests, to their tastes, to their reading ages and stages, and CBI kind of augments that by offering further support in this area. And we will be and are currently developing a full resource with the CBI that will be available on our website and through our mailing list very, very soon. So we'll let Elena take it away there for a moment.
I'm going to talk to you about some of the reading lists on our website, which you can find at childrensbooksireland.ie. Click on Our Recommendations and Reading Lists, and you'll get a whole range of options. There are over 30 of them on there. One of the ones I think would be great to start with is graphic novels. You may have children and young people who you're working with who might have started out with picture books or might have been comic book fans and aren't aware of the amazing range of graphic novels that are out there now. Many of them either living in superhero universes or featuring incredible, strong female protagonists. There is a whole world out there. Anytime Children's Books Ireland is putting together a reading list, we try to make sure that the work is available so that you can find it easily in bookshops and libraries, and contemporary. So we only go back 5 years for English language titles and 10 years for Irish language, where there might not be quite as much of a selection. With graphic novels, you're going to find lots of options that are modern feeling and that children and young people will really respond to. A similar thing is verse novels, and with both graphic novels and verse novels there is a sense of momentum when you're reading them. You turn the pages quickly, you read a chunk of the book quickly, and for reluctant readers that sense of achievement can be hugely important. I know a lot of young people, when they're faced with a tome that is maybe a trilogy or a fantasy novel, it can just be too intimidating. So having a verse novel where there's not so much text on the page is a really great way to get them turning those pages and finishing a book where they mightn't have thought themselves capable of doing so before.
Okay, so some great food for thought there from Elena. Yeah, so, oh, there we go again, sorry about that. So, we're delighted to have two further supports coming very, very soon to you. We have recorded pieces with Sonia Kelly, the aforementioned author of the drama The Wheelchair on My Face, and Padra Guilan, the author of the novel The Call, which I'm personally reading at the moment and can recommend personally. These will be released through our mailing list very, very soon, so be sure to sign up if you haven't already, and you will find the link in the chat. Okay, so we'd like to thank you very much. That brings us very close to the end of our webinar this evening. We'd like to thank you very, very much for your questions and for your attention this evening. We know it's not easy to attend in the evening, and we really appreciate your attendance and participation. A recording, as Liam mentioned earlier at the start of the evening, of this webinar will be available on our website in the coming days very, very soon. And you'll find some further supports on screen that might assist you further. You know, they include our website that we visited periodically tonight at jct.ie. Contact any of us at any time at info@jct.ie, and do join our mailing list. I think it would be worth your while. I can recommend it, but then I would, I suppose. You can search for our podcast channel, Junior Cycle Talks, where you get your podcasts, and JCT English in Conversation with series, where we talk to authors, educationalists and teachers in particular. Follow us on Twitter at JCT English. That's our handle, and of course engage with Children's Books Ireland. They're well worth a look. So that just leaves it for me to say thank you very, very much. We're going to leave you there with the words of author Elizabeth Acevedo from the Poet X. Thank you very much for attending, and we hope you found it beneficial.